Howdy, folks, and welcome to the first episode of Toony Talk, a part of Koopa Talks, where I basically talk about cartoons because I love cartoons. 30 years of my life, I've been watching cartoons of various types and sorts and shapes and sizes, and peoples and universes and you name it. I consumed so many cartoons when I was a kid. It was absurd. I watched dozens of them growing up. The Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and Disney Channel I practically lived on, and eventually Toon Disney and Boomerang and Nicktoons. Eventually, I've watched most things. I think I've seen most cartoons on those networks I've listed at least once. And one of those that I saw at least once that I remember, but I didn't really remember fondly, was Cow and Chicken. It was a show part of What a Cartoon, a show I don't really remember, What a Cartoon, which premiered on November 12th of 1995. It was basically a variety show it was one of those things where you had pilots of different cartoons and eventually they ended up getting picked up into original series. I believe that's how Courage the Cowardly Dog debuted. But it was originally part of that. The pilot featured Cow and Chicken, which are brother and sister, Chicken being the older brother, Cow being the younger sister, but the bigger animal, and then their mom and dad, who are literally just pairs of legs. I mean, it's hilarious. They're just pairs of legs that are psychotic. Even the theme song talks about nobody knows how they were really born to these two pairs of legs. How two clearly human pairs of legs give birth to a cow and chicken is beyond me. If you were to describe the humor of this show, I would say it's bizarre, it's surreal, it's wacky, it's zany. It's got a very beautiful art style, really like it. Very simplistic, but also very stylistically drawn. A lot of the animation is very fluid. The first episode definitely looks like a What a Cartoon episode, absolutely. Very crudely drawn, but still very well. Looks like right off the pages of a comic strip, really. This feels like a very comic strip show. It uses a lot of slapstick and sound effects and a whole bunch of really different things to it that make it feel incredibly cartoony. And I think that that's what works in its favor. It only had 4 seasons. It ran from 95 to 1999. And I I don't remember watching full episodes. I don't remember liking this show as much as some of the other stuff that was on at the time. This was during a time where a lot of the Hanna-Barbera stuff was still in production, and this was a Hanna-Barbera production back when it was still a studio. Bring that back, Warner Brothers. They could do great things. Um, but I do remember a lot of these shows had the problem of really feeling the same because it was the same studio. They all had their own unique quirks and, sort of different flavors, but they largely felt the same. They felt like they were all surreal. It felt like Hanna-Barbera as a studio was going towards more edgy content as opposed to more traditional or family-friendly stuff. It just wasn't, you know, it wasn't like Flintstones or Jetsons or El Kabong or Scooby Doo. It wasn't like any of that. It had that sort of slapstick flavor, but it was so much further over the top, And this show in particular, this kind of was a part of that whole era in the 90s, late 90s and early 2000s where cartoons they pushed the boundaries. I mean, this season opener, um they had a version of the devil, and it was centered around chicken smoking. The devil ends up offering him some cigarettes and trying to take him to hell, and ultimately he's saved by Super Cow. It establishes a lot of stuff. It establishes that the parents don't have an upper body; they're just legs. And it sounds if it sounds bizarre, it's because it is. The pilot is especially bizarre, but the show itself is bizarre. And they make some changes once the series gets started. First of all, you obviously can't have the devil in a kids cartoon, so they changed it to the red guy. He still got that arrow tail, but he's not even really demonic at all. He's just kind of a mischief maker, and he's often a scam artist. He's seen a lot of his names that he takes are puns on butts, and they act like they've never seen him before in most episodes. He'll usually show up, like in one episode he showed up, he was the cafeteria lady. In another episode, he was a doctor. In another episode, he was a TV director. And then in another episode, he was the ice cream man. And then in another episode, he played a Canadian Mountie. That was pretty funny. He played a mall cop in one episode. He's just this vehicle for plots to progress forward, and he's a really good vehicle for that. And he's kind of got a very eccentric voice to him. He's basically Ed Bighead, you know. He basically, because Cow, Chicken, and the Red Guy are all voiced by Charlie Adler, who voiced Ed and Bev Bighead in Rocko's Modern Life, and his voice is, he basically does Ed Bighead for the Red Guy. There's very little, if any, difference between the two, other than I think the Red Guy is a little bit more malicious, more of uh, a shouty character than Ed, even though Ed shouted quite a bit in Rocko's Modern Life. Charlie Adler does amazing. Is my favorite performances of his in this show are probably Chicken and the Red Guy. Cow just feels very phoned in. I feel like whenever Charlie Adler does a female character, he just kind of comes across as I don't know, like overdone. It's still a good performance, like I buy it, but it just doesn't sit with me. I don't know. It's like Bev Bighead was a better example of a female character that he did. Just kind of like a female counterpart to Ed Bighead, but Cow is just not, she's not on the same level. But she's not even really one of my favorite characters in the series. Chicken and the Red Guy are probably my favorite characters in the entire series, and they have two friends called Flem and Earl, one being voiced by Dan Castellaneta. He basically does Barney, which I think is really cool. Barney from The Simpsons, not the dinosaur. And the parents, like I mentioned before, they're just a pair of legs, but they're also insane. Like, they barely ever act like parents. They're just wild and crazy and wacky. They're always laughing all the time, and they take situations in stride. Like one of the characters will put a hole in the wall, and the parents will go, "Well, I guess we're gonna have to fix that hole in the wall, huh, dear?" Like, you'll see a lot of that throughout the series. They're just wacky parent characters. They're not traditional in any sense of the word, especially, you know, least of which because they don't even have an upper body. You know, they, most of the time in the show, they show them using their legs and feet to do things, and they really emphasize that. It's hilarious, but it's also very, very surreal. A lot of people like to compare the show to Ren and Stimpy, but I've been going through Ren and Stimpy after I finished this, because that's another one that I'm really foggy on. I don't really remember a whole lot of it or watching it, because I think it was on in the earlier half of the 90s, and syndication wasn't, it wasn't really big in syndication, so didn't really catch a whole lot of it. But there are differences between the two. They're definitely of the same breed of humor, of very surreal, sort of almost, I'm hesitant to say stoner humor, because it's not quite that, but very tripped out, very wacky. Like, I mean, for crying out loud, the parents don't have full torsos. They're just legs. Like, how do you come up with that? That's insane. You know, the fact, I can't imagine pitching that to Cartoon Network back in the day. Oh, well, you see, the parents, they're just pairs of legs, but they can fully talk, and they're functional in the real world, but they're just legs. We never see their upper body, and it turns out they don't have one according to the pilot, and some of the silhouettes of them in the episode, you never see their upper body. So very, very, very wacky, you know. So, let alone how they managed to, how pairs of human legs managed to have a cow and a chicken. And that's the whole theme song, is just basically like, yeah, we were born to a pair of legs, and we're a cow and a chicken. It's weird interspecies freak show. Deal with it. So I remember vaguely watching this show with my sister, and I think she liked it a lot, but I don't, it's like it wasn't on enough for me to really have a general consensus. Not like something like at the time of, because I believe this was at the time of Two Stupid Dogs and Johnny Bravo, I think early Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff Girls. It was all around that era, and it didn't last well into that era. It was the whole What a Cartoon era. And I don't remember all which series premiered on What a Cartoon. But I do know it was bizarre. It was just bizarre, but in a fun way. The storylines, some of them are pretty straightforward, but others kind of, because of the bizarre nature of things, it's kind of hard to tell without reading the description exactly where it's going. You know, you look at a title card and you think, oh, it's going to go in this direction, but it turns out it doesn't go anywhere near that. So, but they deal with the usual situations. Like, there's an episode where Chicken has to deal with cooties and just traditional kid stuff, Fear of Flying. Um, my favorite episode of the series would probably have to be Journey Journey to the Inside of Cow, which is a season 2 episode. I'm trying to find which one it is. Yeah, it's episode 8B, Journey to the Center of Cow. The description reads, while trying out the pork butt catapult, Chicken is accidentally swallowed by Cow. Mom and Dad take her to a doctor, the red guy, and they must get Chicken back before he journeys through all 4 of Cow's stomachs. Really good episode. The red guy here uh, displaying a level of real empathy and professionalism, but is still wacky and yelly and crazy. Uh, but Chicken's dialogue in this episode is what stands out to me, because the way that Charlie Adler yells some of the lines is just absolutely hilarious. I was laughing out loud when I was watching this, because some of the lines that Chicken yells, you can find some of the clips on YouTube probably, but I mean, man, it is a funny episode. There's so many one-liners in this one that just absolutely had me on the floor rolling around laughing. Just hilarious. A lot of episodes did stand out to me. Like, there was an episode in the first season called Orthodontic Police, where the red guy plays an orthodontic policeman. He goes around putting massive brace helmets onto people, like just really hugely uncomfortable just brace helmets on everybody in town for some reason, and Super Cow ends up kicking his butt, and that's the end of that. Very simple episode, but it's one of those ones where me describing it won't do it justice. You have to see how it plays out in order to get what I mean, because it's a good example of how the red guy can go from being just an innocent sort of bystander who's trying to run a business or take part in something, to where he's actively just screwing people over through his, various shenanigans. He's a very good vehicle for plot devices, and his character molds into the multiple characters that he plays really, really well. And I think this is a great demonstration of that, with him being this orthodontic policeman. Really, really funny. Another favorite episode of mine is Chickens Can't Fly, or it's either Chickens Can't Fly or Chickens Don't Fly. I believe it's Chickens Don't Fly. Yes, episode 7A of season 3. Chickens Don't Fly. And the description reads, while waiting to board a plane for his and Cal's visit to Brunel, I actually had to look that one up. It's an obscure country in Asia. Really didn't know about it, but you learn something new every day. Chicken suddenly has a fear of flying, and the red guy plays a stewardess who ends up messing with Chicken the whole time. He fakes turbulence and does all these other different things to just get Chicken to freak out. Before the plane even takes off, Chicken jumps out the emergency exit, and it's a hilarious one. There's a lot of funny stuff going on. I really like the character of Chicken and the way he's portrayed. Sometimes he's not utilized to the best of the show's abilities, but when he is, he's a standout character. I think ultimately the character that sells the show is the red guy, and I don't think there's a single episode where he's not featured, actually. I think he's pretty much cemented as main cast. I'm pretty sure he's in every episode. Now, I skipped a couple of the ones that were kind of dull to me, but I didn't skip too many. I think it was like every other episode I ended up skipping once the plots just didn't resonate with me. But this is a very watchable show despite that. I enjoyed my watching through these 4 seasons. And the show did get progressively better. It was one of those situations where the first season was kind of weak, and subsequently the second, third, and finally the fourth seasons ended up being really, really good and having more plot lines that played into the show's strengths quite a bit. Really, I thought that was really special. It's a very special show for sure. It is of that era where cartoons were very crude and sort of edgy and crass, but not totally adult, but just they had attitude. They had that sort of late 90s attitude, and that I'm hesitant to say grunge, but to some reason that sort of comes to mind because I was a part of the era as well. It had that sort of feel to it, if you know what I mean. Lots of bright colors and a lot of watercolor stuff, and it just really, really, really fun show. But ultimately, if I had to rate the show, I'd probably give it a solid 7 out of 10. It's not quite an 8 or 9. Like I said, there were a couple of episodes that didn't really stick with me, and they felt like they sort of drug their feet, and the show got so bizarre at points where I was just completely lost as to what was going on, because it was all over the place with the slapstick and the visuals and um, just the basic premise and where it was going. The way that it played out was very bizarre. So it was very unpredictable at times, and it kind of lost me in a few places in different episodes. So I mean, for that alone, I took some points off it, but ultimately, I think it's a solid 7 out of 10. It's up there. It's definitely worth watching if you haven't seen it before. It's only 4 seasons. It's not very long, and the episodes themselves aren't very long. There's an A and a B, so wherever you can find it, be sure to go ahead and watch it. And let me know what you think down in the comments below. Did you like this show? Did you grow up with it? Was it something that was on your radar? Is it something you're interested in now that I've talked about it? Let me know. Thank you very much for watching, folks. This has been the first edition of Toony Talk, and I will see you guys next time. God bless. Have a good one. Peace.